In 2023, I reviewed a different roller coaster for every single day of the year, 365 in total. At the end of each review, I gave each coaster a super specific, detailed, almost scientific score to the 100th decimal point.
I'll go 4.56. 7.52 for Tennessee Tornado. Going as high as 8.84.
Okay, maybe it was the most arbitrary scoring system of all time. But while I honestly think I did a pretty dang good job giving as honest of a score as possible to each ride, it for sure was not perfect. Looking back over my scores, there were absolutely some instances where I went, what in the absolute heck was I thinking? Sometimes it was because I got more rides on a certain coaster after reviewing that changed my overall opinion. Some were due to the fact it was early in the year, and I didn't truly know what my scale was yet. Sometimes maybe I was just in an impartial mood at the time, for good or for bad. So for this video, here are 10 roller coasters that I quite frankly owe an apology to, and deserved a much better score than I gave it live. A quick note, these will be listed chronologically as they appeared on the channel and not in any particular ranking order. First up, we go back to January 3rd for just the third review of the channel, and that's Goliath at La Ronde, their 175-foot tall B&M Hyper, quote, model.
I'm going to give it a 6.87, which might seem low, but again.
It didn't seem low, Bryant. It was low. All year, I absolutely gushed about how important views were to me. You get an absolutely stunning view of the skyline of Montreal from the lift hill of Goliath. The ride itself was smooth, with some fantastic floater airtime hills, and again, with awesome views being positioned right against the St. Lawrence River. Now, this was my first day of ever filming for the channel, so I was definitely still very much a noob when it came to time management. So unfortunately, also not helped by the fact it went down for a bit afterwards, we only got one ride on Goliath. Adding on to the fact I had just started my lovely scoring system, it 1000% deserved a higher score than 6.87. I claimed Vampire was the best coaster at La Ronde, and while it's a fantastic Batman model, no, Goliath is king at this park. I won't be rescoring to a specific decimal point, but instead giving a range of where I think it should have landed, and Goliath deserved probably in the 7.25 to 7.50 range. Next, we're going to Six Flags Great America outside of Chicago for the January 23rd review of American Eagle.
It's a 4.44, fours all around.
I technically already apologized for this score and broke into the review during editing, but it's worth bringing up again, as this thing is hella historic. And I always gave some love to history, even if the ride itself wasn't too mind-blowing. This was the second ever Intamin. It deserved more praise. No, it didn't have holy crap airtime for me, but it was still a solid ride. Those that followed along saw that I had horrendous luck with getting both sides of dueling coasters, so I'm sure that didn't help its live score either. Looking back, American Eagle probably deserved, at the very least, a score in the upper fives. Okay, this next one kinda has an asterisk, as it's less of an apology and more of an update. My February 9th review was for Grizzly at King's Dominion. It received a wonderful and absolutely needed retrack from the Gravity Group in 2023.
Oh, I hate to do this because I've been actually talking up Grizzly. Oh, it's not that bad. It might even be the fourth best ride in the park. No, that was like a 2.62. Not good.
Now, for how it was running then, yeah, that was an accurate score. It was horrendous. But thankfully, I got back to King's Dominion last September to experience the new Grizzly, and thank you, Gravity Group, because it is indeed back to my fourth favorite in the park. It runs so much better now, with still enough of a bite, in a good way, to remind you it is a 40-plus-year-old wooden roller coaster. Complete with the setting, which was the only thing I still liked about the old version. Grizzly's probably running in the mid to high sixes now. It's that good. On to February 13th to the other park in Virginia, where I gave probably the most inaccurate, ridiculous score all year. I gave Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, the first ever B&M Hyper.
That's like a 5.21.
I don't know what I was thinking. Or maybe our ride that day was just really that mediocre. Now, do I still think Apollo is near the bottom of all the B&M hypers out there? I do. But in no way, shape, or form did it deserve a 5. I did have the opportunity to get a lot more rides when I went back to Busch Gardens Williamsburg later in the year. And yeah, guys, it's a solid coaster, and gives some especially good night rides in that wooded scenery. This is not the worst hyper. Diamondback. Yeah. I honestly would be willing to push this into the 7s, an almost 2-point jump. Apollo, you sincerely get my biggest apology of the entire year. Now to March 17th, let's go to the West Coast, to Knott's Berry Farm for a very underrated B&M invert. I'm of course talking about Silver Bullet, which to be fair, I still gave a decent score.
7.52.
Now that I've ridden mostly every B&M invert in the country, I think it might be my third favorite invert after Montu and Alpengeist. I stressed multiple times throughout the year that I love rides that keep getting better throughout its layout. Silver Bullet was a wonderful example of that. The drop was for sure on the mediocre side, but the elements and inversions hit more and more throughout that layout. And it probably has my favorite ending sequence on any invert. That helix is so intense. Complete with a pretty setting over the water, I'd honestly consider very high 7s, if not over an 8. We're going to stay in Southern California to one of the roller coaster capitals of the world, of course the iconic Six Flags Magic Mountain, for the March 23rd review of West Coast Racers. Yet another coaster that I still gave a decent score to.
It's only getting a 7.12 for me.
While for sure the flaw of the ride, I docked it way too much for the comfort collars. While removing them would instantly make it a top coaster in the park for most, they didn't take away from the ride as much as I said in that review. The dueling element was so well done here. I am looking at you, Twisted Colossus, with some excellent interactions and fun launches, and especially basically getting to ride it twice. It's close to being my favorite premiere in the country, and looking back, West Coast Racers probably deserved closer to a 7.75 than a low 7. Hey, speaking of Magic Mountain, and speaking of premiere, let's talk about Full Throttle, the March 30th review. Yet another coaster that live, I gave a very good score to.
I'm giving it a 7.62.
But after a few more rides after recording that, I liked it even more, guys. One of the punchiest launches out there, right into what's probably my favorite vertical loop that I've experienced. It is so massive, and complete with the stunning California scenery being upside down for so long, it's a sensation you don't get on too many coasters. The fact it also has a backwards section and another launch, Full Throttle is my favorite premiere, especially since it doesn't have comfort collars. Hot take? I probably should have gone low 8s here. Yeah, Full Throttle is a awesome roller coaster. Let's finally jump ahead from the winter reviews all the way to the July 12th review of the iconic Coney Island Cyclone. This one honestly received a very high score from me.
I'm going 7.89.
And I'm not wanting to increase it that much higher, but only to say I should have popped it into the 8s. I loved this thing. Some of the most unique airtime on any coaster. The hop, as I affectionately called it, where you literally are thrown to the other side of the seat if you're riding alone. Add on the insane history and the setting. This thing is a treasure that must be protected at all costs and should be on every enthusiast's bucket list. You would think that by the end of the year I would have fully honed my scoring system to perfection. That was not the case, as we are going all the way to December 19th. Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger at Fiesta, Texas had the best theming, by far, of any Six Flags roller coaster in the entire chain. When I emphasized all year how much theming improved my personal experience of a roller coaster, it deserved better than the score I gave it.
7.50, just a flat 7.5.
I also ironically ran into the same issue I had at La Ronde with kind of limited and rushed time at Fiesta, Texas, and I only got 2 rides on Cliffhanger. While I still don't think it'll ever top Sheikra or Griffin for me on the B&M dive lists, I think it deserved at least a few bumps into the 7.7, 7.8 range. And finally, kinda crazily, the last apology I'm handing out is to the last coaster I gave a score to in 2023. December 30th was the review of Tron Light Cycle Run at the Magic Kingdom. I'll fully admit, I was already building up the emotion of recording my last video at Big Thunder later that day, so this was very much a let's get it over with kind of review.
I'm gonna go 7.39.
Now, that score is still fine, but it's better than that. Tron is great. I was able to get another night ride later that day, and man, some of the best visuals of any coaster in the US. I very much undersold how good it looks inside the building and how truly great that launch is, and the insane smoothness. Guardians is still easily the better of the two at Disney World, but I think Tron deserved closer to an 8 than it did a lower to mid 7. So there you have it all. I hope these coasters accept my forgiveness, and we can move on from any past issues and learn to love each other going forward. Now, unfortunately, my imperfect scoring system, it worked the other way as well, as maybe I gave some coasters too high of a score, when in reality, I needed to pump the brakes a little bit. So in my next video, I'll go over the 10 coasters that maybe I slightly overrated. Until then, thank you so much for watching. This was my very first at-home video, recording with a mic, so I hope I did it justice. You can definitely expect more of these going forward, as well as the usual in-person reviews and experiences, and a variety of other ideas as well. And of course, if you could leave that coveted like, comment, and especially subscribe, it would mean the world to me. Thanks again for watching all, and I'll see you next time.